Have you ever been in a position where you found yourself questioning everything you believed to be true? Perhaps it was something religious or political. Maybe someone you trusted did something to undermine your trust in them. Maybe someone close to you turned out to be a monster. When I was a sophomore in high school, my father began what we referred to as a project in our basement. He never specified what the project entailed, only that it was his business, and whatever went on down there was to be kept strictly confidential. He even soundproofed the basement walls, although I found it strange his business would require that level of privacy. I didn't push the issue. As for my social life, I had a small group of friends at school, some of whom were into all kinds of kinky, bizarre, and sometimes outright disgusting stuff. Typically, I tuned out whenever the subject of weird stuff came up, as I didn't spend much time on the internet. Typically, I would just look up NFL or NBA highlights, and social media sites like Twitter and Facebook never really appealed to me. One day, my friend Kevin brought up a subject that I had never considered before, and has come to haunt me ever since. Something he referred to as the dark web. What he described it was horrific. Hitmen advertisements and other crazy things. I'm not sure why, but his descriptions of the dark web piqued my curiosity. Could such a messed up place truly exist on the internet? Kevin invited us over for the weekend so he could show us what he was talking about. We agreed to go over. Saturday came and Kevin had managed to hack into the dark web. It didn't take very long for the rest of us to see he was telling the truth. All the awful things he had described were on full display right now. It was nauseating to see. After about 20 minutes of scrolling down, Kevin came across a link to an untitled live stream. Out of curiosity, he clicked on the link. The screen changed to a pitch black screen. After a short time, we were greeted by a digital clock gradually counting down. When it reached 0, the numbers disappeared and the black screen remained. For the next 30 seconds or so, we heard a deep and raspy breathing sound. Eventually, a beam of light appeared, presumably from a flashlight, and illuminated some strange man wearing a hideous mask, a top hat, a suit, and a cape. I get it, this sounds fake, but this really happened. When he spoke, his voice was distorted. I'm guessing to help keep his identity hidden. He said, "Good evening, and thank you all for joining us. You all may call me Hawkins, and boy do we have a show for you tonight, a pair of helpless victims." With that, the rest of the screen became illuminated. We saw a small room and the walls painted red. On the back wall were 2 women. One very obese and the other one was in good shape, both of whom were trapped on a wall. Hawkins approached the obese woman and stroked her face very creepily. "Oh, you an ugly one, aren't you? Ugly creatures like you don't deserve to be here. The pretty ones do." He then glanced at the second one, the more attractive woman, and he said, "Am I right?" She didn't respond. "I have something special planned for you, sweetheart, but first, let us deal with the little ugly one." I began feeling nervous. I was hoping this was all just a strange act, but with everything we had been shown on the dark web so far, I wasn't too sure of that. Hawkins shouted for garden shears. A pair of hands appeared from off the camera to give the masked man some garden shears. He then approached the woman and pried the shears open. He said, "What a pity, if only you were better looking. I might not have to do this." With that, he began to do the unthinkable thing, and then all we heard were deafening screams. My friends and I all gasped in shock, and one of whom began to vomit. Then out of nowhere, this guy grabbed his chainsaw. I get it, this sounds over the top, but this is really what happened. I felt queasy at the moment of the chainsaw. After receiving the item, he used it. The obese woman passed out from shock while the second woman was also beginning to sob in terror. Eventually, Hawkins shut off the chainsaw. He looked at the other woman and he yelled for a whip. The unseen assistant handed him a whip. He used it, and when he was done, the girl dropped to the floor very suddenly. It was at this point when Kevin noticed a chat box on the side. Most of the messages from viewers were expressing utter glee and satisfaction at the horrific sight. Outraged, Kevin typed into the chat box, "What the hell is wrong with you people? I warn you, the police will hear of this." Hawkins walked behind the woman, and suddenly, the anonymous assistant spoke up. He said, "Hey boss, check this message out." Hawkins pushed the woman over and walked to the webcam. "Oh, a tough guy, huh? Gonna call the cops on me, huh, Kevin? It was like a ton of bricks were dropped on all of us. Did that man really just mention my friend's name? Suddenly a box appeared containing his full name and address. Kevin was frozen in terror. Whatever. I have all the information I need on you. It looks like I'll be seeing you soon. That's what Hawkins said. Hawkins walked away, back toward the woman. Kevin finally shut the computer off and curled up into a ball, shaking uncontrollably. The rest of our friends bailed, but I chose to stay behind, even though I was also frightened out of my wits. Fortunately, nothing happened that night, but Kevin didn't get any sleep at all. He was a nervous wreck for the next few days, unable to concentrate in class and staying quiet at the lunch table when he was normally a very talkative kid. Several weeks passed, and he began to mellow out and return to his old self. The situation on the dark web appeared to be over. Until one Friday night, that is. I was watching the 10 o'clock news when a report broke out about a mass homicide that occurred a few miles away. I was shocked and horrified when I saw a reporter standing outside when I recognized Kevin's house. His mother, father, and both his siblings were found, and Kevin himself was reported missing. I woke up in the middle of the night to use the restroom when I saw my father reach the top of the staircase. His clothing was covered in dirt, which I found very odd. I asked him why he was up, and he told me that he was fixing a busted sprinkler with an attitude. I sighed. Whatever, Dad. I did my business and I went back to sleep. The next afternoon, my dad went out on a run. He went to go run some errands. While he was gone, I suddenly decided out of the blue to check out the basement. Looking back, I'm not sure why I picked this particular moment to check it out, but what the hell. I wanted to see what the secrecy was all about. I reached the bottom of the stairs and began checking out the basement. Nothing looked out of the ordinary from the last time I had set foot down here, aside from a few items being in a different place. And then I looked underneath the staircase and noticed something that definitely was not there before. It was a door. I walked to the door and I opened it. A light turned on automatically, and what I saw shook me to my very core. It was a small room with red walls and mounted cufflinks. In the corner, I saw blood-stained garden shears and a chainsaw. On the wall next to the door was a desk with a computer and webcam. I also saw the mask, the same mask worn by the man I only knew as Hawkins. I was standing in the same room where the awful live stream took place weeks earlier. I heard my father's voice shouting upstairs when he noticed the basement door was open. He came down cursing at me, but he stopped dead in his tracks when he saw me standing in the entry of his secret room and holding the mask. We stared at each other in an awkward silence for a long time. My father was arrested shortly after. He had soundproofed the walls to prevent the possibility of anyone's screams from being heard around the house. My friend Kevin and those two women from the live stream were buried in our backyard. Their bodies, or what was left of them, were laid on top of one another. I guess that explained my father's late-night yard work. As to why he took the name Hawkins as his dark web identity, he confessed to murdering another man back in 1995. The man's name was Carl Hawkins. 5 years have passed since I discovered the truth about my father. I haven't paid him one visit in prison. Eventually, he will be executed by means of lethal injection. I wish I could say I'm saddened by this, but I'm not. He's still my father after all, but it is what it is. Now I'm left to wonder whether he passed on some kind of bad seed to me. I fear that one day I will snap and become the same kind of monster that he had become. But I always wonder, who was the person holding the camera? There's no more dark web searching for me.